Hey guys, thanks for checking out another HatchetCast episode, and today it will be me solo in the studio doing an episode. I'm actually going to be going out of the state for a little bit, so we should only have one filler episode and then you will see the normal crew. But with that disclaimer out of the way, make sure you guys, if you're watching on Spotify, to follow the Spotify channel. A lot of people actually listen to the podcast, but not everybody is subscribed to the channel, and that's a very free and easy way to help support what we're doing so that we can keep put out quality content. If you're on YouTube, this is probably actually going to be about a week old as far as when that's recorded. But make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and also share this video with a friend or a family member to see, it's a great way to support us. So with that being said, without further ado, guys, I'm actually going to be reading a couple of articles about something that happened recently that is kind of unsettling. About just world events. So I think you guys have already heard about this, but I'm just going to go ahead and read the article anyways. So in recent news, the Iranian president, Ebrahim Raisi, the leader of the Islamic Republic, has died. Iranian authorities have officially confirmed that a helicopter crash on May 19th resulted in the death of President Ebrahim Raisi as well as 8 others. Among the victims were Iran's Foreign Minister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian, the governor of East Azerbaijan province Malik, the supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's representative in Tabriz, and Imam Mohammed Ali al-Hasham. As stipulated by Article 131 of the Iranian Constitution, First Vice President Mohammad Mohaghir will temporarily assume the duties of the president for 50 days until a new presidential election is organized by a special council. The news that Raisi's helicopter had initially gone off radar before making a crash landing was reported by Iranian news agencies around 1300 GMT the previous day. Conflicting reports then surfaced, many of which turned out to be false. Initially, it was reported that the president and all the others on board had survived and were en route to Tabriz in a motorcade. This was later contradicted. There was a later false claim that contact had been made with some of the passengers and that rescue teams were heading to the crash site. Conducting the operation to reach the site was extremely challenging due to adverse weather conditions and the difficult terrain on Iran's East Azerbaijan province. There were reportedly 3 helicopters in the presidential convoy. The other 2, carrying ministers and officials, reached their destinations safely. Ebrahim Raisi was returning from a meeting with Azerbaijan's president Ilham Aliyev. The 2 leaders had participated in an opening ceremony at the Giz-Galasi Dam on the border between their countries. The heads of state visited various sections of the dam and were briefed on the details of constructions and its benefits. Sunday morning, Raisi arrived at Tabriz International Airport and took a helicopter to the Azerbaijani border, approximately 100 kilometers away, to participate in the aforementioned ceremony. The return route was planned to be the same. However, after a few hours, it became known that the helicopter carrying the president had disappeared from radar. One of the first countries to offer help was Russia. Vladimir Putin issued a directive, and Moscow sent 2 planes, a helicopter, and 50 rescuers to the vicinity of the crash to assist in the search for Raisi's helicopter. Additionally, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Azerbaijan also expressed their support and offered assistance. The rescue operations continued throughout the night, but the incoming information remained highly contradictory. Late in the evening, Iran's deputy foreign minister announced that Imam Mohammed al-Hasham was in Raisi and had allegedly made contact twice, complaining that he was feeling unwell. A representative of the IRGC, which is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, also stated that the helicopter had been located, but this information was later refuted by the head of Iran's Red Crescent Society. Similar confusion was observed in the Iranian media. It seems that the Iranian people wanted to believe in a miracle. Tens of thousands of residents took the central streets and squares of cities holding prayer vigils for the president's well-being. However, the miracle did not occur. Early in the morning of May 20th, rescuers discovered the crash site of the helicopter, which had been completely incinerated, leaving nothing but ashes. The head of the Ministry of Health and Medical Education of the Islamic Republic stated that DNA testing would be necessary for identifying some of the victims. Now, a lot of questions are going out about what is going to happen. Is there going to be a giant vacuum in the Middle East? Is this going to cause more unrest? Obviously, this is something where this is going to be a tough time for Iran, especially as they're trying to figure out what's going to happen. That's going to be a lot of strain on the country. It'll be a strain on their government system. But it's interesting to see what could happen. My question is whether, was there, you know, other actors that were involved? Was it just bad luck? Was it, who knows? Who knows what's going on? So, I mean, in the past, this article here actually does talk about how they had, Iran has actually been through something similar in the past in terms of losing their leadership. Despite Raisai's death, the stability of Iran's political system is expected to remain intact. This is not the first time Iran has faced the loss of high-ranking officials. In 1981, during the Iran-Iraq War, both the president and the prime minister were killed in a terrorist attack. At that time, the government was far weaker and the country was less stable. Replacing Raisai might be challenging, but it is certainly possible. So I think it's a big thing is like figuring out what is going to happen. I know there's a lot of articles that are talking about there's possibly going to be more attacks in Gaza and in Palestine because there's just kind of like a good opportunity to kind of take advantage of Iran kind of in disarray right now because their leadership is scrambling, trying to figure out who to replace the president. So now is kind of like the time to be able to put more pressure in Gaza. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? I'm also curious to see like what is Putin and Xi Jinping thinking? How is this going to affect BRICS? How is this going to affect their relationships? Is it going to be, you know, business as usual? Or is it going to be something where it could end up causing strain? My question also is there going to be a replacement that is against BRICS that is more favorable to the West than it is to the Middle East and the Eastern powers, that is also more willing to, you know, work with the West? On the flip side of that coin, if it's somebody that's more in favor of working with Russia and with Xi Jinping and also with the other Arab nations and against the West, and he's more of a hardliner than this president was, that could also be a crazy situation because now they're going to really push hard on trying to find nukes or trying to get their nuclear program up and ready to be full up, and then maybe put more pressure on Israel and already strain that relationship. It's already at a breaking point. So it is kind of interesting to see what's going to happen as far as that is concerned. So something else that happened in Slovakia that actually was not that long ago, I think it was only a few days ago, but the Prime Minister of Slovakia was almost assassinated. Here on this article, it says the suspect in an assassination attempt on Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico may not have been just a lone wolf as previously believed. The Interior Minister said on Sunday as security services tried to shed light on an attack that sent shockwaves throughout Europe. Fico is no longer in immediate danger, but is still in serious condition after being hit by 4 bullets on Wednesday in what was the first major assassination attempt on a European political leader for more than 20 years. The incident has highlighted the deep polarization of politics in the Central European country of 5.4 million people. Interior Minister Matus Setejau Estok said an investigation team has been set up which would also look into whether the suspect acted as part of a group of people that had been encouraging each other to carry out an assassination. Yeah, my question is right off the bat is like, does this rabbit hole go deeper than we realize? And I think everything nowadays, it is, you know, like everything these days is just so deep in the rabbit hole, and like all of these things that are conspiracy type theories regarding all the stuff that's been happening around the world, it goes so much deeper than you realize. Everything, people look at things at a surface level, or at least the media tries to paint it at a surface level, where all of us are just like, oh yeah, just move it along, it's an isolated event. Most likely they're probably connected. Who knows? Who knows? But there is nefarious actors behind the scenes, in my opinion, that are doing this. So one of the things that like I think about is like, well, first off, I think the Slovakian Prime Minister was either against the war in Europe, in Ukraine, says that The assassination has led to calls across Slovakia's political spectrum for a calming of tensions and a toning down often of the fierce rhetoric. So the government and opposition have already traded accusations of stirring up division within society. The leader of the opposition Progressive Slovakia Party, Michael Simeka, said in a statement that he was sorry some parties had rejected roundtable talks and that he still believed that they could succeed. So there is a polarization that is happening across the globe. We're starting to see kind of these lines being divided. We see lines being divided in our own country between left and right, between, Ukraine versus Russia. We got lines between China versus America. We have the Slovakian countries that are having a split. We're having even Iran. We forget that there was like almost an attempted coup, I think last year or the year before, in Iran that almost happened. And there was also all of that political unrest that happened from that girl, that teenage girl, or I think she was like in her 20s, that was killed by law enforcement officers in Iran. And that kind of flipped the country upside down. I remember that happened right around the time of the BLM riots and all that stuff. So, there's a lot of different actors that are at play that are trying to disrupt the system. And if you look at the trends of how things are happening right now around the globe, it just feels like everything is just coming apart at the seams. Like there is literally just trouble and unrest all over the globe. There are tensions all over the globe that just seems more amplified than normal. I feel like since 2020, it has been insane as far as the roller coaster ride of current events that has been happening all around the world. And so we're starting to see things just kind of start ripping apart at the seams. BRICS has also stated that the dollar is almost completely like replaced. So I'm going to pull that up here, but it's absolutely fascinating to see how much, BRICS was one of those things where people were like, whatever, it's not that big of a deal, like it'll never happen. But it looks like now it will actually be something that is going to be a huge threat and possibly lead to the downfall of the dollar. I mean, we're also, see, here's what doesn't make sense to me, is we have BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, China, and South Africa, and a bunch of other nations that are essentially using their own currency to trade amongst each other and no longer use the US dollar as the common currency for all global trade. So they're looking to replace that. And what's crazy is it just doesn't feel like we're doing anything to stop it. It doesn't seem like we're doing anything to stop it. In fact, what we're doing is we're diluting the dollar even more by printing more of it and just pushing it out there and just giving it away. It's one of those things where I wonder, sometimes I feel like the dollar is already, like it's already done, like it's already finished, it's already over, and the powers that be or people that are put into positions of power are literally just trying to spend it as fast and as much as possible while it still has some monetary value in exchange for things of real value. So like what that makes me think of is if you have dollars or if you have money, right now you need to be buying stuff like supplies, you need to be buying tangible objects, gold, silver, bullets, guns, optics, gear, anything that is an investment, like actual things that you can actually grab and hold, is something that I would consider getting into. Property obviously is a hard one, but just essentially ditching things that are, or getting hard tangible assets versus just holding onto the dollar. Because I feel like one day the floor is just going to drop out from underneath of us and it'll be worth nothing. And so everybody that's involved with spending all that money and just pushing it out there and diluting the dollar's value even more and more, I feel like they already know it's coming and they're just trying to spend as much money or as much of the American dollar as they can possibly spend and hope that they can use it for all it's worth, and almost like they're stealing off the Titanic as they're trying to get ready for getting in a lifeboat. So here you go right here. So look, here we go. BRICS leaders won't attend Zelensky's peace conference. Now, this article is from 17 May 2024, but it was scheduled for June 15th. The 16th at the Birkenstock Resort near Lucerne is expected to revolve around President Zelensky's proposed roadmap for ending the conflict in Russia. More than 160 countries have been invited to take part, including members of the G7, G20, BRICS, and the EU. Russia, however, has not been invited to the talks. How are you going to do a peace treaty with a country that you're at war with, but not invite the country you're at war with? That's the whole point, isn't it? Like, you bring the other country in to sit down with them and talk about peace. So anyways, it's kind of a joke, but it looks like the BRICS nations will not be attending that. So that it just goes to show, like, they're calling it a parody. Switzerland has invited China to the Ukraine summit, but Beijing has yet to confirm whether it will send a delegation. We've got all of these different things that are happening all around the world. We have things ripping apart at the seams, like I said earlier. And also we had, I don't know, what are your guys' thoughts about what happened with the solar eclipse or that solar event? There was that huge storm. I was actually talking to a buddy of mine who, a military buddy, and he was saying that he actually saw the aurora, you know, that aurora event that happened in the sky. He saw that all the way up north in like North Carolina. And so all these different states saw that, and people are saying that maybe we dodged a bullet on that as far as at knocking out all of our power and all of our electricity around the world, which would be unimaginable. Can you imagine, like, having no power, no electricity, and how fast things would devolve? It's just insane. So for those who don't know what I'm talking about, this has actually happened in the past, and you may have actually heard about it, but it's called the Carrington event, where essentially a solar storm, like a storm that came out of the sun, essentially, for more simple folks like myself. The Carrington event happened in 1859, and I'm just going to read about it here. I'm using a very reliable source, Wikipedia. Just kidding. Yeah, I'm serious. It's from Wikipedia. But it is, Wikipedia is terrible. The Carrington event was the most intense geomagnetic storm in recorded history, peaking on 1 to 2 September 1859 during solar cycle 10. It created strong auroral displays that were reported globally and caused sparking and even fires in multiple telegraph stations. The geomagnetic storms was most likely the result of a coronal mass ejection from the sun colliding with Earth's magnetosphere. The geomagnetic storm was associated with a very bright solar flare on 1 September 1859, and it was observed and recorded independently by British astronomers Richard Christopher Carrington and Richard Hodgson, the first records of a solar flare. The geomagnetic storm of this magnitude occurring today has a potential to cause widespread electrical disruptions, blackouts, and damage due to the extended outages of the polar electric power grid. And this is the other thing that happened. This is why a lot of people thought that what happened with this solar event that happened a week ago, they believe that because people were seeing auroras all over the world, and usually you only see those in like the Antarctic or whatever, or, you know, far up north. But it says that there are auroras that were seen around the world in both the northern and the southern hemispheres. The aurora borealis over the Rocky Mountains in the United States was so bright that the glow woke gold miners, who were reported to have began to prepare breakfast because they thought it was morning. It was also reported that people in the northeastern United States could read a newspaper by the aurora's light. The aurora was also visible from the poles to low latitude areas such as South Central America, Cuba, Hawaii, Queensland, southern Japan, and China, and even at lower latitudes very close to the equator, such as Colombia. So anyways, as far as the Carrington event, if that type of stuff happened today, it would be absolutely insane. Like I said earlier, the world is falling apart at the seams. The biggest thing is that if we have whether it's a global conflict, a civil conflict, whatever, what may have you, training, honestly, in my opinion, on a more rigorous scale, and also becoming familiar with things that could end up becoming proliferated in the event of a conflict, I think is super important. So we need to start thinking about how would you operate your team or your community to be able to be effective in a conflict type zone? You would need heavy weapons training. You would need the ability to be able to drive certain vehicles. You'd need to also have enablers or have people who have specific skill sets, whether that's from the military and they're veterans, or you have guys who are, have a trade skill or a craft that they've learned and they've honed that can also be super effective to the group. And you can take that person and put them with one team that's going out to go do a certain mission set, bring them back to your little, Minuteman fob, and then send them out into another team to go do a different mission set somewhere else. But thinking outside the box this way about how we can just kind of evolve past that, just train on rifle and pistol and just train on maybe some SUT and basic ranger stuff. Like, we got to start thinking more outside the box about your training regimen for your group. And even if you're not a part of a community, still becoming familiar with that type of stuff. So whenever you do stumble across a community, when you do stumble across other people who are prepared citizens, then you can immediately be an asset to that team and be like, hey, I know how to do all these different things. I know how to operate this type of equipment. I know I have this trade craft skill that I've learned that I used to do for my normal job, back when we had society, and now I can be applied in these ways. So make yourself very marketable as far as presenting yourself and your capabilities and your skill sets to a group or the community that you're already a part of. The biggest thing is, I think that with everything falling apart, you need to have wisdom and have discernment on things as well. And that's something that we today, I think, especially with everything that's going on in the world, everything that's falling apart, we need to be asking for the right things, and also making sure that we have reminders in place to let us know that we are not a part of this world. So one of the things, I look at all these news events and I look at all these natural disasters and things like that are happening all over the place, things by bad actors that are also being instigated. And it's good for us to be prepared. It's good for us to be put into a regimen where we are disciplining our body, where we are honing our skill sets. Just like David had his mighty men, he had warriors, he had commanders, he still had armies that were able to be lethal on the battlefield in a very big way. And that in itself is a good thing that men, I feel like, are strong, are incentivized to do, because it's in our blood, it's in our DNA. But the other thing also is we also have to remember that we have a mission set, that we don't belong to this world, right? If we are going to be honing that craft, it is for the glory of God, by being a light to other people who are weak and who need help, who are in a point of desperation, and we can provide that hope to them by giving them, whether that's amenities, giving them protection, giving them food and security, and the gospel, most importantly. And I think that we forget that sometimes, where we get so wrapped up in all the preparedness stuff, so wrapped up in the news and everything falling apart, and what do I need to prep, and this and that and the other thing, that we forget about what our true mission set is, which is to provide the gospel and bring the good news of Jesus Christ and salvation to people who are lost and hopeless. Like, I look at these news stories and I'm just like, dude, there is no hope. Like, everything, if you have your hope in the government, man, like, that's terrible. It's just hopeless. Man will always let you down. So I want to read something from 2 Chronicles. This is something that I've been reading in my devotion, and it really stuck out to me because of this individual and what they specifically ask for when they're praying. So Solomon was King David's son, and he was the one that was going to succeed him after David passed away. Now, David had a very long legacy. He was a warrior, like straight up to the core, was just a man's man. Also a man after God's own heart. Like, God loved David. And Solomon was promised by God. God made a promise to King David about his son Solomon that he would live in peace and that he would live in prosperity because of his dad, King David, his diligence to the Lord. So for my parents out there, I'm a parent as well. When you live a life that is for the Lord and you live in that legacy, by serving the kingdom of heaven, it will be a blessing to your family. It will be a blessing to your friends and the people around you. God will honor your diligence and your loyalty. And so that's something that I also am constantly trying to remind myself of. So I'm going to read this. 2 Chronicles chapter 1. Solomon, son of David, established himself firmly over his kingdom, for the Lord his God was with him and made him exceedingly great. Then Solomon spoke to all Israel, to the commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds, to the judges and to all the leaders in Israel, the heads of families. And Solomon and the whole assembly went to the high place at Gibeon, for God's tent of meeting was there, which Moses the Lord's servant had made in the wilderness. Now David had brought up the ark of God from Kiriath Jearim to the place he had prepared for it, because he had pitched a tent for it in Jerusalem. But the bronze altar that Bezalel, the son of Uriah, the son of Hur, had made was in Gibeon in front of the tabernacle of the Lord. So Solomon and the assembly inquired of him there. Solomon went up to the bronze altar before the Lord in the tent of meeting and offered 1,000 burnt offerings on it. That's a lot of offerings. That night God appeared to Solomon and said to him, "Ask whatever you want me to give you." First off, can you imagine being in that position? You're in bed, you're asleep. I usually sleep like a ninja, and meaning I'm always doing karate in my sleep. But you're asleep, you're in bed, you wake up, and God's there, and he is like, "Hey, ask me whatever you want, and I'll give it to you." Anything. What would you ask for if God was standing in the room and he asked you, "Ask me whatever you want, and I'll give it to you"? What would you ask for? Well, we're about to see what Solomon asked for. So Solomon answered God, and he says, "You have shown great kindness to my father and have me made king in his place. Now, Lord God, let your promise to my father David be confirmed, for you have made me a king over people who are as numerous as the dust of the earth." And here's where we get this amazing request from Solomon to God. He says, "Give me wisdom and knowledge that I may lead this people, for who is able to govern this great people of yours?" So first off, you got to think about the weight of that request. He doesn't ask for riches. He doesn't ask for power. He doesn't ask for gold. He doesn't ask for a long life, to live longer than 120 years. He doesn't ask for a bunch of earthly things. He asks for wisdom. And what's crazy is you see that Solomon understands the weight of the position that he's in, and that he is also not just the king of Israel. He has been put in charge to be the king of God's people at the time. So he sees, like, I am being put in the responsibility of being the king and caretaker of the people of God. And if I screw up, it's God who's going to be, I have to answer to. And so he understands that. So he asks for wisdom and knowledge that he may lead his people, this people. He didn't say his people, that I may lead this people, for who is able to govern this great people of yours? And he says that is God's people. And God speaks back to Solomon. And God said to Solomon, "Since this is your heart's desire, and you have not asked for wealth, possessions or honor, nor for the death of your enemies, and since you have not asked for a long life, but for wisdom and knowledge to govern my people over whom I made you king, therefore wisdom and knowledge will be given to you. And I will also give you wealth, possessions, and honor, such as no king who was before you ever had, and none after you will ever have." Then Solomon went to Jerusalem from the high place at Gibeon, from before the tent of meeting, and he reigned over Israel. Solomon accumulated chariots and horses. He had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horses, which he kept in the chariot cities and also with him in Jerusalem. The king made silver and gold as common in Jerusalem as stones, and cedar as plentiful as a sycamore fig tree in the foothills. Solomon's horses were imported from Egypt, from Kue. The royal merchants purchased them from Kue at the current price. They imported a chariot from Egypt for 600 shekels of silver and a horse for 150. They also exported them to all the kings of the Hittites and the Arameans. Like, literally, imagine that kingdom was so wealthy, their economy was doing so good that gold and silver was as common as a rock. And God blesses Solomon because of his heart, and he has his priorities straight. He has his priorities set on honoring the Lord, and in return, because God was pleased with him, God honored him back. One, with wisdom and knowledge, but also all of the other earthly things that God was just blessing him with because of his request. Now, I'm not saying that God will bless us with financial, prosperity and all of these things. We're not called to that. What the point of this lesson is to remember that we serve the King of the universe. Like, we literally serve the commander of the Lord's armies, who has the power to do anything. Like, literally, he is the Almighty God, and to be a part of his kingdom and to be in his service. Like, if I felt like sometimes, like, man, I just screw up all the time. Like, I'm trying so hard. I'm trying to live a life where I'm trying to be pure. I'm trying to be a good example to my kids. I'm trying to be a good husband to my wife. I'm trying to do all these. I'm trying to be a good business partner to my business partners here at Barrel and Hatchet. Like, I'm trying to be a good steward, and I feel like I fail all the time. Like, I feel like I come short all the time. And that's when I realized, like, I don't have anything special about me. Like, in fact, there's probably a lot of unspecial things about me. Like, but I am just so blessed to be able to have God there, to be able to rely on him whenever I fall short. And I can't do things on my own. Like, it is comforting to know that God is there for me to be able to rest on him and to seek his wisdom. And that's something that I also want, is I want to have, when I pray those prayers now, I pray a prayer of not just like, oh, Lord God, help me with, like, let us make a lot of money, and let us have all these things, and let us have these, all these other cool opportunities. My prayers now have been changing, and that's something I've noticed. I've been changing my prayers to, let me continue to be a witness to what you're going to do. Let me continue to be obedient. Check my heart. Like, make sure that my heart is good, that my heart is not falling away, that I'm not just spouting off words and it's just hollow, like an empty jar. Like, I want it to be filled with substance. And I'm now looking at the only person, or the only being I'm trying to please, is God. Like, I'm looking at him going, like, I hope you're looking down at me, and I hope that you are looking at me in the way that you looked at Solomon and saying, like, I am pleased with you. Thank you I am pleased that you are being diligent. I'm pleased at your heart. And that is a type of thing that I think we should all strive for. We should strive to be only pleasing God. Like, man will always let you down. I probably will let you down at some point. And there's nothing that I can do to be able to, there's no way. I can't even compare to God, dude. Like, so it's one of those things where if we look for hope, we look towards the Bible, we look towards Jesus. He is the hope that we need. He is the hope that this world needs. And it's going to get a lot darker. It's going to get a lot worse. But what I want to do is I want to be able to be a obedient servant to him. I want to be an obedient soldier for the Lord that is seeking only to please him. Because if I can get a well done from God, like, made my day, dude. Like, made my whole life. Like, that, my whole life would be worth it at that point. And so that means, doing things that the Lord's called us to do, being good fathers, being strong husbands, being strong warriors for the Lord. And a warrior for the Lord, I mean, like, being humble, having humility, being capable, being dangerous, but at the same time having restraint, being good, having patience, not getting angry at small things, and not seeking riches of this world, but seeking the riches of heaven by ministering and being obedient to God and living life as a humble servant. These are all the qualities that are what the Christian warrior is supposed to be about. And that is the life that I am wanting to live, and I fall short, but I'm so glad that God is there to be able to pick me back up, to say, hey man, take a knee, hydrate, and then let's get back on the road and keep going. And also giving you that encouragement and giving that comfort and that peace, especially when times in your life are just absolutely terrible. So, you know, I wanted to just kind of put this podcast out there. I know it was a solo one. You had just me today. But I just wanted to give you guys some encouragement. I know I talk about some of these events that are happening all over the world, and it seems scary, but we have comfort in the Lord. And if you don't have that understanding of who Jesus is, and you don't know who he is, or maybe you used to, and you grew up in the church, and like myself, and you kind of just fell away from it, and you know that God is calling you back, be obedient to that calling. Open up that door. He is asking to be with you. He is asking to allow him to give you that comfort and that peace. He wants to deliver you from those hardships and those trials. And there is an out, and that is through Jesus. So if you guys are interested, for those who are wanting to know more about him or wanting to get your life back right with the Lord, let us know. We'll send you a Bible. But I wanted just to let you guys know that here at Barrel Hatchet, we care for you. We love you guys. We want to impart God's love upon you. We want to give you encouragement through Scripture, through our podcast, through our topics. If you have anything that you want us to talk about also, or things that you're struggling with, or topics that are hard topics that involve things that men struggle with daily, let us know. We'd like to start talking about those types of topics on the podcast, and also making sure that the podcast is an encouragement and a blessing to you guys. Because we know that the world is a hard place, and we need other men, strong men in our community to stand up together, to rely on each other, and to all follow the Lord, and to lead our families and our friends towards hope and peace. So, guys, make sure you guys continue to read the Word. Don't be a closet Christian. Be bold. Stand up for the Lord. Bring hope and peace and love to those around you, and share the love of Jesus Christ to those that you know. And we'll see you on the next one.